There's been twice when I've been the only person. And so I've,
I can't hear you.
oh,
Oh, there you are. There's been twice when you were the only one?
when I was the only one. And I've pretended like I was like recording a cassette tape. You remember, did you ever do that? Like you recorded a cassette tape to your friend and stuck it in the mail. So I was like, oh, I'm going to write it's going to be like my cassette tape to Kate. So I wrote down some topics and then I just talked to her about them. And so I was just doing that, like, oh, maybe I'm the only one today. So I have like cassette tape, but I don't have any. I was like, what should I put on the cassette tape? But
today. Yeah, sorry, I've been a little unsteady this week. It's been absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And I will also miss tomorrow because I have an hair appointment because, as you can see, it's getting quite long.
Oh, okay. Well, nice. Yeah, I went to look for a hair appointment in my new neighborhood, and the first date available, like literally I could find anywhere that cuts white people's hair, is May 28th.
You know, when I first went to Berkeley in the mid 90s, I lived in a predominantly Black neighborhood in South Berkeley near the Ashby BART station. And so I went around looking for a hairdresser and found this great hairdresser who, of course, didn't really have much experience with hair like mine. She was like, oh, last time I cut hair like yours, I was in beauty school. And so she really got a kick out of it and actually tried to recruit me into some like hair styling competition. And she goes, you could be my secret weapon. Nobody else is going to show up with a white lady.
But what did she want to do to your hair for the competition?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Because that's like bringing up images of Bo Derek, back in.
I don't know. It didn't work out. I had a school trip that I had to leave the country for, and it just never worked out. But she was so delighted with my hair.
Well, there's a lot of little like storefront Dominican beauty parlors around here, or I shouldn't say, I don't know why I said beauty parlors, salons. And so I've been a little bit like Googling, like, do any Dominicans have really fine, thin, straight, super straight hair? Like, could they maybe do it? But
well, you can
so maybe in the next couple of weeks, I'll get my, I don't know, it's either my courage up to go into like it's like one of those things where you're kind of going into like a subculture and like and
that's really
hey, can you cut this? Or and actually I'm looking for color, right? So could you color this?
Oh yeah, that's a big deal.
It's a bigger deal than cutting it. A little bit bigger deal.
I mean, chances are they've all learned it, right? Like chances are if they went to any kind of cosmetology school.
Yeah. So if you Google what are Dominican salons good for, they tell you the blowout, right? And I definitely do not want the blowout. That's happened to me enough times in Indonesia with a hairdresser, and like suddenly I have that like. There was this hairstyle that's called it's like where they tease it and you have like the big lift and then they put a big fake bun on the back of it. Like that's what you do for weddings and stuff. And so, you go into the hairstylist not to get that, but suddenly you come out with like bangs, sticking up and like, so I definitely do not want the blowout. Yeah, exactly. It looks like 1980s.
Yeah, I remember the same thing in the South Korean salons that were on base. Holy shit. First of all, they wanted to perm everybody's hair.
They wanted to perm it?
They wanted to perm your hair.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of like a fight,
That was probably an era as well, though, right? Although you do see a lot of older Asian ladies still with their hair permed.
Yeah, I think that they were doing a lot of like embassy people and officers' wives and diplomats, and they all wanted that big, like you're talking about, the big, huge blowout. Mm-hmm. And that's not what, that's not what an 18-year-old wanted at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it could be if it's like kinky hair, the blowout is like where they're doing it with the straightening iron, like blowing it and straightening it. That could be it as well.
Well, I have to do that sometimes too.
I don't know.
Yeah, you have such fine hair. You've said that would.
I have very fine, very thin hair.
Yeah. Do you have any Puerto Rican salons in your neighborhood?
none that say that on the window. There's Ethiopian and mostly Ethiopian, Dominican, and I think probably West African, like braiding ones that look like they're probably braiding, like West African. Or
you must have some great restaurants in your neighborhood.
Oh yeah, there's definitely an Ethiopian restaurant on every block.
Wow.
Or every other block, Ethiopian and Caribbean restaurants, and then a lot of, like taquerias and stuff like that. Yeah.
That sounds exciting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely different than Arlington.
Definitely different than Arlington, yeah. Although, yeah, we got those kinds of we got that kind of food, but like the upscale version of it, right?
Have you heard from your neighbors what kind of things they do during the summertime? I mean, obviously because of COVID, things were different, but do they do block parties and?
It seems like on my side of the street, there's kind of a porch happy hour vibe going on where people, it sounds like every couple of weeks. And because my roommate's younger, I'm like seen as like, oh yeah, the younger people congregate and have happy hours as compared to like the parents of small children. And there's a couple of older couples on our porch block. But it's interesting, those cross the street issues. Like our neighbors came by and brought us a potted plant yesterday, which was really nice of them. And we said, oh, who do you know across the street? And they were like, no one. We like the two sides of the street are just like, and maybe it's because you're like on your porch, right? So you get to know people on your porch, but like across the street, I feel a little bit the same way. Like, oh, that's so far. I don't even walk on that side of the street.
Road, right? I mean, like
it's a wide road because it has bike lanes on both sides, and it's a pretty busy road. Like you wouldn't, like you walk across from Kate's house to your house, Astrid's, you wouldn't even think about it. Here, you would almost need to walk down to the corner and walk to, because there's no stop signs at the intersections. The intersections are one intersection down is where the stop signs are. So there's a good 3 blocks of 3 to 4
so
blocks.
You don't want to be drinking and jaywalking. Could be taking your life in your own hand.
That's right. Or like standing out. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or get run over by one of those little 3-wheelers.
Oh my gosh. There was like 7 of them that came through earlier when I was on a call. And like, it's kind of gotten to be a joke. Like my colleagues, because I opened up the windows, my colleagues are like, did you move? People are like, the sirens,
Did you miss the conversation we had about the 3-wheelers? Because
what are the 3-wheelers?
Show her a picture, this picture that you showed me of what drives up and down your street, because you're gonna shit yourself.
Washington D.C.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's funny because I don't know that exactly what I showed you was what is actually.
Well, I was impressed. So Astrid needs to see that.
Okay.
Like gangs of people.
Oh, sorry, it's just taking a minute to load. Basically, I can't get a big one, but basically something like this.
Yeah.
Oh, 3-wheeler rise of the death machines. Look at even the it's something like that.
Wow.
Can you imagine
and they'll
be across the street with 6 or 8 of those running at you?
But
they
why?
usually
I don't understand. Like, how is that a thing in DC?
I don't know if it's a DC subculture thing. It's primarily Black guys, and I would say between the ages of probably whatever age they can get their driver's license to drive those, so probably 16 to maybe early 20s. And a lot of times they have I mean, maybe they just make that loud anyway, but they must do something to like their mufflers and stuff because they're loud as well. And they usually drive in at least packs of 3. So you'll see them like all coming down like in a little bit, either in like kind of in formation or like racing each other down the street. And today there were literally 7. They were so loud. I like stood up to see, and I was like, oh my God, there's 7 of them.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Anyway, no wonder your neighbors.
But why in that part of DC, and why? Like, is there a club nearby, or like?
No, I mean, I was saying to Dana, it's been kind of a big conversation in the Black community here. I mean, DC is just tipped to be less than 50% Black. So, it's always in the 70s, it was Chocolate City. Yeah. And the population, the Black population just keeps getting squeezed into smaller and smaller geographic footprints. And so there's been a big discussion around whether this 3-wheeler culture, like if these were one, the police, of course, pull them over or chase them. And there's been a couple of deaths, Astrid, of like police chasing these guys and they crash, or, pulling them over as you would a car and getting shot. So there's been, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 cases in the past couple of years of that happening. And then a lot of dialogue around, like, if these were white kids, wouldn't we be like building parks where they could like go off-road or things like that? But instead, there's no outlet for this hobby / sport. And I don't know why it does seem to be pretty DC local. I don't know. But if you go out on weekends down to the areas where there's bars and stuff, people are like driving to bars on these things, like driving up and parking and going into a bar.
Huh. Weird.
I guess they're easier than motorcycles, and I wonder how much they cost. That's really interesting too. Mm-hmm. How much one of those would run, if you're a young person being able to afford one of those.
I mean, you can imagine how it becomes like, what your community thinks looks really fly. Like suddenly this becomes it. And then everybody's like tricking them out and whatever.
That's really interesting.
I don't think I've ever seen a woman on one, and they definitely, they don't take 2 people. Like it's a single seat, which is also kind of curious to me. It's a dude thing. Yeah, it's definitely a dude thing.
Well, my brother's motorcycle only has, as he says, only has 1 saddle, because I was like, does Anne ride with you? And he's like, oh no, I ride alone. And I'm like, oh my God, you're so weird.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind of motorcycle does he have that only has 1 saddle? Or does he
bought a Harley, which really blew my mind. Because when he was at West Point, much to my mother's, right after he got out of West Point and he was at Fort Sill, he bought some kind of Japanese bike, and then he bought a Ducati, and my mother and my sister-in-law hated every minute of this. And then I think I mentioned this earlier last summer, that he sent me a text and said, don't tell mom, but I bought another motorcycle. I bought a Harley. And I was like, don't tell mom. I'm like fucking 57 years old.
Right, exactly.
No, I mean, seriously. I don't know what kind of a Harley it is, but it's very dude.
Yeah.
No, I put in the chat a link to a motorcycle race that goes through Portland's alleys.
What?
Yeah, actually, it happens in our neighborhood, among other places.
Holy
it's
they ride the back alleys. Yeah.
Is it legal?
I have not heard of that.
Well, technically, it's legal because they're riding legal motorcycles through legal streets.
Huh. But
it's like 300 of them that show up and go through the back alleys. And actually, the picture in the article is perfect because
oh my God,
that's
so
exactly
Portland.
That is so Portland. But that is exactly.
Oh my gosh, we just
exactly
have to put that up so Kate can see it too. The guy in the robe.
Yeah. That's classic.
It's a great article about the. I think it's called the Alley Sweeper.
That's an alley or those are people.
That's a legal road. Unpaved between people's backyards. So we have a whole bunch of these unimproved roads and right-of-ways in our neighborhood.
So these are more like dirt bikes.
They're dirt bikes. I can see why that would be fun though.
Totally.
I mean, but I bet neighbors hate it. I have to say that if that were, I would not be happy about that.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'd
it happens
like to
once
do
a
it.
year. I think they
I
only
want to
do it
do it,
about
but I
once
don't
a
want to
year.
see it.
Yeah, I think
Rope
they do
guy
it
is
once
the
a year.
best.
Yeah, rope guy.
What are the names of the races? We went to Singapore once, and a whole section of the downtown was closed off and had been made into like a Grand Prix type of city race. And I got the sense that it was like I mean, it was Singapore too, right? So it was definitely very high end. Like people were coming from all over the world to race in this course that had been made out of, Singapore streets. And we'd not been there for the event, but were there as they were kind of taking it down. So there were some sections of the city that you would walk through and there'd be like grandstands on the side of the road. Does that sound familiar at all to you?
Yeah, I mean,
kind of
but Singapore, I mean, there's definitely one. There's one in Monaco, right? Like there's a big Grand Prix.
That's every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's race cars, not motorcycles.
I'm pretty sure these were racing motorcycles, but
yeah, that's definitely a thing. I don't know what they call them, but I remember my ex-husband really being interested in watching them on television.
I spent a summer internship working for BMW motorcycles. That was fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Doing what aspect?
Well, I was a marketing intern of all things.
I
was 18, and I was helping organize test rides for what was then their new high-end sports bike. And fun fact, I was based out of Munich. I didn't have a driver's license yet, so they gave me a chauffeured car to take me around to all these test rides. Of course, like a big 750 IL. It's like the high end. It's like the late 80s, like high end Beamer. So here I am traipsing around, setting up in all the whatchamacallit, like all the dealerships. And of course, because this was their most expensive motorbike at the time, the K1, I think it was called. Of course, they had all their best customers who would get the first organized ride with professional motorbike riders. And then all the people who buys high-end Beamers, like middle-aged guys.
I was going to say older guys. It's like who buys the convertible sports cars.
So what could possibly go wrong, right? Like this is the 0 series, which was explained to me means they were hand assembled and the engines had not been ramped down to 100 horsepower yet. Ooh. So in Germany, you cannot have, first of all, 100 fucking horsepower in a motorbike. And that's like the legal limit in Germany. So these were untampered engines.
Right. It's like a
motorbike.
Bicycle.
Motorbikes could do 280 kilometers an hour.
Why?
And the test drivers, right, like who were taking these like cohorts of 40 or so middle-aged dudes who were interested in these motorbikes, like every single place we went, one of them would have a crash and would lay down the motorbike. Thankfully, nobody died.
Oh my gosh.
But one of the tests, and they wouldn't let them drive that fast. But one of the guys who was leading these tours with these customers said, I had her up to 283 and there was no end in sight. Who in their right mind? Like sitting on a rocket. Like, why would you choose to do that?
Yes. Why? That sounds just like splat.
Yeah, that's like what, 160, 170 miles an hour? It's absurd.
That's way too fast to be going on a motorcycle.
There's
no reason for that.
But yeah, that was my summer at BMW motorcycles.
Dudes, again.
Boys being boys.
Right. That's pretty good though. You've had some really interesting gigs in your day, Astrid.
I know. I'm just kind of trying to make sense of like how you even applied for that and got that job, but.
Oh, well, funny you should ask. I wrote to the chairman of the board of BMW, who was an alum from my very posh boarding school that I attended.
I see.
That's how you get a job like that, as it turns out.
That's pretty smart.
Right?
Yeah. Where was your boarding school again?
Well, the German one was on Lake Constance.
Wow. That must have been nice.
Sort of a model for Hogwarts, In fact,
how many? Is it really big?
The place sure.
Like university sized?
No, not even. No, it was smaller than that. It's I was in there were 3 campuses at during my time, and I was in the one that was sort of the middle school, I guess you could say, like whatever. Putting a link in the.
Did you have a good experience? Did you enjoy it?
I did, mostly. Yeah, I mean, I was a scholarship student, but not one of the known scholarship students. So if you were a known scholarship student, you had a much harder time than your clandestine, truly.
Oh yes, that is a model for Hogwarts. You'll have to check it out.
I put the link in the chat.
Dana.
Let me see.
Well, they're scrolling too fast past the.
Oh, I can probably find a still image.
Wow. It's a fucking castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it was a
Even
former.
before it loads, I see Schloss, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's a former. Actually, it's a former monastery.
Oh, cool. Oh my God, that's beautiful.
A Benedictine monastery that went in the, I think, went back and forth. It's in part of the country that went back and forth between France and Germany. So I think it was at one point granted to the Margrave of Baden, who was the local feudal overlord. Who then partnered with the founder of the school to create the school.
Yeah, I can see why you took to sailing so well.
Right.
I mean,
it was a thing to do.
For sure. Yeah. What a great thing to do. I'd want to be on the water all the time as well.
Yeah, good fun. Not so much in the winter, but yeah.
Okay, well, shall we get going today?
Oh, sure. Motorbikes.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Let's see, where is that? There's the button.